mean, think about it. For $47, you can get malware and you get an internship because guess what? Cyber criminals do internships better than a lot of companies do. And then the person teaching them gets a percentage, of the first 3 months or whatever. And so they're all making money. And, in 2 to 3 months, a cyber criminal can make ten to $20,000 a month.
Wow. So come to find out that the cyber criminals have a pyramid scheme.
They do. Yeah, they do. Exactly. And it's working.
Yeah, it's a
because
working pyramid scheme.
because
Wow.
most pyramid schemes run out of money at the bottom. We're talking about a $10.5 trillion economy and growing. It's not running out of money anytime soon. So the pyramid schemes work. The only thing that happens is they eventually run out of bottom to pay for the top. That's not happening with
No.
cybercrime.
Wow.
So it's
All
not going
right.
away anytime soon, for
No.
sure.
Welcome to Podcast Wise, Perspectives, Cybersecurity, and AI. In this episode, we are diving into a high-stakes conversation about a threat that is no longer confined to the server room. It has moved into your living room and your boardroom. Our guest today is Jocelyn King, an elite Silicon Valley insider and former Intel executive who transitioned from a victim of a devastating cyber attack to being named a top 10 woman in cybersecurity. Jocelyn's story is a harrowing masterclass in modern risk. She survived a breach where hackers cloned family devices, bypassed home security systems, and planted physical surveillance in her bedroom. This ordeal resulted in a $500,000 loss and profound personal health and family impacts. Rather than retreating, Jocelyn partnered with top cybercrime fighters and delved into dark web operations to understand the enemy. Today, as a strategist and speaker, she helps C-suite executives and organizations navigate an AI-powered world where voice clones, deepfakes, and $10.5 trillion in global cybercrime have turned the digital landscape into a battlefield. Jocelyn breaks down the terrifying evolution of AI-powered threats, from deepfake videos to voice cloning, and shares her zero-trust framework for building a robust human firewall that protects both corporate assets and executive reputations. We also tackle the sobering reality of small business vulnerability, revealing the 7 fundamental steps that provide 700% greater protection for organizations that cannot afford to become another statistic in a $10.5 trillion cybercrime economy. Please welcome Jocelyn King. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hey, Jocelyn, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tin. So great to see you.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. All right, we're going to do a little icebreaker here. So,
Okay.
Jocelyn, you've successfully navigated the executive halls of Silicon Valley and
Mhm.
co-founded a top 10 cybersecurity startup. What was the single biggest lesson you've learned in the boardroom about risk that you now apply to your work protecting individuals from online threats?
I think it's to always stay focused on the number one objective. And because that grounds you in everything. I've been in boardrooms, investor meetings, staff meetings, all hands meetings, client, client meetings, interviews with press, everything from Wall Street Journal to other stuff. If you can just always stay focused on that, you can always be grounded. And then whatever you're saying or whatever you're answering as far as questions, you're always going to have that 50,000-foot view, and you're going to be the person who people see as calm and strategic, and you're playing a long game, and you're always thinking about what the right decision is for
Mhm.
where you ultimately have to end up. I think if you stay focused on that all day, every day, everything else sorts itself out.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as a former senior executive, how do you advise C-suite peers to move beyond viewing online safety as merely like an IT cost center,
Uh,
reframing it instead as a critical component of competitive differentiation
right.
and enterprise risk management?
Well, it's one of those things that most people know. It's kind of like doing a will or buying life insurance or one of those, or going to your doctor for that checkup you don't want or that procedure you don't want. You know you need to do it, but you
Mhm.
keep putting it off because there's not a sense of urgency. And unfortunately, the urgency comes because either you or your peers are hacked and you've lost millions at your company. I was at a Silicon Valley company when the FBI came calling to tell us we had been hacked 6 months prior by a
Wow.
foreign nation state. And all of our IP was taken. And that sent us into such a deep pivot and everything, because all of a sudden we're realizing our strategic advantage is compromised. And now
Yeah.
we're doing damage control. And my grandmother had a wonderful saying, and we've all heard it probably, a stitch in time saves nine. Man, prevention, an ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. All those things our grandparents used to tell us are
Yeah.
true and never been more true in this case. I mean, look at it. Cybercrime is now a $10.5 trillion economy. If it were a country, it would be the world's third largest country after only the US and China. If that
Wow.
doesn't tell you that it's coming to your business, you need the wake up call now, because you're either on the road to building your defenses up, or you're on the road to being another statistic and another headline. There's
Wow.
no other option.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Now, with the rise of generative AI, how has the speed and the sophistication of social engineering and deepfake attacks shifted the calculus of C suite executive protection, and what non technical SOPs are now essential?
Well, the biggest thing about, I love AI. I use it every day. It's an incredible tool. All executives should. Even when ChatGPT was launched, the reason they were so overwhelmed by the market response is they thought they were going to be selling to CEOs to help them figure out how to run their business. They did not expect it to be such a runaway success in the B2C. It's an incredible tool. We all love it. Well, maybe not everybody loves it, but we're all using it. And whether you know it or not, you've got it in 100 apps on your phone. So you are using it, even if you're not using ChatGPT. The challenge is nobody loves it more than criminals and scammers, because
Right.
it's made bad hackers good hackers great, and great hackers virtually unstoppable. And everyone from Ferrari to a Roop to everything else has either experienced multi tens of millions of dollars of scam damage, or have
Mm.
narrowly avoided it, because executives, and I've been a C-suite executive 3 times. I'm a CEO and founder now again. The number one target is the people right under the executive level being
Yeah.
targeted by scams and deep fakes of the executives, giving them orders and instructions to do wire transfers or other things that will compromise, or sending them links to click on so that they can download malware and ransomware. The other
Yeah.
way it's doing it is, ransomware used to be a 9-month average. It would be that cyber criminals would get into an organization through a malware link, not let anybody know they're there, and be poking around and hunting around until they found what they came for, which was understanding how much cyber insurance does the company have, and what has the executive team and board of directors agreed to pay as a maximum. Because guess what? That's exactly what they're going to ask for. If you said
Yeah.
$5 million, they're coming in with 5 million. It used to take them 9 months to do that. Now we're finding that they'll be in for 48 hours to a week and then get that same
Wow.
information, because they're able to use AI and bots and everything to find the information faster. So ransomware attacks are not real time, but they've gone from 9 months down to under 9 days, and that's huge. So AI is a powerful tool for us to use, and it's unfortunately an incredibly powerful tool for cyber criminals, scammers, and hackers. And that means that it is even harder to detect and prevent, and you've
Yeah.
got to raise your game. One of the sayings we have in cybersecurity: the bad guys only have to be right once. They only need one shot to get it. And that's why over 80% of all companies have reported data breaches.
Hmm. Yeah. Because it's so much easier for them at this point. I guess it's like it can become like a set and forget type thing,
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
they're utilizing the AI to mine the data,
right.
whereas before they had to had eyes on it to like look and do the spying basically, right? So that's where.
Yeah, and they had bots they would deploy, but AI, because it learns and deploys so
Mhm.
fast. I'll tell you, I've been in Silicon Valley for over 20 years, and, launch and iterate is the mantra. Launch and iterate, fail fast, improve. Unfortunately, nobody does that better than hackers.
Right.
Not even every day, every hour of every day, they can take risks and are willing to take risks faster than any other industry segment, which means They can spray and pray. They can, do all these different types, blunt force attacks. They can
Yeah.
do, infiltration. Here's the thing. Let's take Ferrari, for example. Ferrari was almost scammed out of tens of millions of dollars from a deep fake of the CEO to the CFO. And it was so realistic that the CFO was ready to wire. Ferrari makes deals all the time in the millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. It was not an unusual thing for there to be a wire transfer. But in this case, the CFO, this was the first time he had heard of it. And usually he knew about the deals in advance of these large wire transfers. So
Mhm.
he was very smart and wise. And he said, "Sir, yesterday I was in your office and you recommended a book to me. Tell me the name of
What
that
book
book."
was it? Yeah.
They couldn't answer. And so the scam ended. And that saved Ferrari somewhere in tens of millions of dollars. Other companies have not been so lucky. They have wired the money and never to see it again. But what's happening in those cases, it's not that Ferrari's off the hook and they've moved on. They've invested a lot in this. They're going to come back again to somebody else in the organization. They're going
Mhm.
to come back with, if you create a model of the CEO that emulates them so well, and there's more time and money invested in doing that than just doing a general phishing email and looking for somebody to accidentally click on it. You want to see your ROI of your investment. So, they're not off the hook. They're coming back. So you've got to use that close call as your wake up call to go, okay, we've really got to get everybody trained and prepared to spot these things. We've got to put all the right procedures in place so that when they come again, we're not
We
still,
don't
we still stay
bite.
safe. We don't bite. And as you and I know, because we all work in the human behavior side. I mean, I work in the tech side too, but I specialize in the human behavior side. Depending on the numbers you look at, but somewhere between 92% down to 80%, 82% of all cybercrime involves a human element. Somebody clicking on the wrong thing, somebody making the wrong call. AI in the hands of scammers, cyber criminals, and hackers uh, makes it incredibly easy for the one person that will fall for it to be able to click on something. And that then decimates the company, small and large. I work with Fortune 100s and I work with small companies with under 1,000 employees. They're all equally vulnerable in different ways
Yeah. And for different reasons.
for different reasons. Yeah. Mhm.
So now you emphasize that most breaches start with human error, just like you said.
Mm.
So for large organization, what is the most cost-effective and scalable strategy to train leadership and employees to be a robust human firewall against modern threats like phishing and credential stuffing?
What I find works best, because I've been involved in this for over 10 years, especially for the executive team, it's to do a group training with them or a group debrief, I would say, because having been an executive for 20 years, I mean, you want a debrief. And then you want some individual one-on-one time. When I go in and work with executive teams, I generally become the best the best friend of the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer,
Mhm.
because he or she knows that their C-suite is their weakest link.
Mhm.
And the challenge is they're the weakest link because they're the number one target. They're also the weakest link because they tend to treat themselves as exceptions. And, I did it myself. I was an executive at Intel and it's like, you put off the delays, you put off the training, you're traveling, you're not going to the general training with your staff, you're off doing other things. So your software's not updated. Your skills are out of date. You haven't been debriefed and you're the number one target. If anybody's following along at home, they can understand that's not, it's starting, the odds are stacking up against you. So
Right.
you have to then do some one-on-one concierge training to get them up to speed. Also, sitting in executive meetings while people will ask some questions, nobody wants to ask what they perceive to be an uninformed or dumb question.
Mhm.
So they'll forego asking it and they missing information they really need in a one-on-one, even if it's just a 30-minute meeting to get them up to speed. They understand what they need to do to protect it, where their weak link is, so that the company doesn't go down on their watch.
Mhm.
And I think emphasizing that's what I do with executives is say, that you don't want this to happen on your watch, and this is what you need to do, and this is where your risks are. And then, as I was saying, the number one target is the people right below them, the people with the access to the IP, to the wire transfers, to the
Mhm.
accounts, to that special SharePoint drive, to the board meeting information, they're the ones who are used to getting instructions, usually under time pressure and urgency, to follow instructions of the executive team. Those are the people that really need the training, and you've got to get the executives on board with saying, we're going to have a security word that we're not writing down, we're never putting it in email, but if I give you an instruction like this, you have to ask me for that word, and if I don't answer it, you say no to me.
Right.
And the executive has to know what the outcome is, and the people under them have to know. Because the thing is, the research that's been done over the past decade is it's 8% of the employee base is responsible for 80% of the breaches. And it's twofold. It's the people with the highest access. It's also the people with the worst security hygiene, let's just say, or the people who have really bad habits. Those are
Mm-hmm.
for two very different reasons. And you want to isolate them and train them in different ways. For instance, the people with very bad security hygiene, this is true in your family. Everybody's got the brother or sister, uncle, aunt, grandpa, whatever, that is not tech savvy. So you need
Right.
to restrict their access more than others. You should only grant access to the level of the competency of understanding the tech and the situation, because cybersecurity comes out of military for a reason. That command and control, need to know basis, all of that you have to employ. It's just we're not at war, and we don't think in a military means, but you have to think that way to outsmart cyber criminals.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that because, giving access to somebody, especially like scope creep,
Oh,
right? Like
yes.
if that person started, let's say, as an intern and then went to as an assistant
Mhm.
and then got demoted somehow, or went into, no, not, let's not say demoted, but went into a different department as an
Mhm.
assistant,
Right.
right? So then now they still have access to department A,
Right.
right? So
Like
it
somebody
is
who
all
works for the controller and has access to all the budgetary information and the financials and
right.
even banking.
Yeah.
Now is, let's say they're working in marketing.
Right.
um, they need to, so that's why having persona-based access is really important
Hmm.
instead of person. And then you can adjust it for people, but persona gives you this need to know basis. This person working for the control, what does this person working for the controller need? Regardless of the individual, whoever's going to fill that role is going to have that. And again, that's back to the military. What does a private have access to versus a major? Same sort
Hmm.
of thing. And then if you change roles, your access changes. And most companies do not do a thorough enough job of making those changes when there are internal transfers. You bring up a great point. Internal transfers are one of the areas where people keep their inherited rights,
Hmm.
and and that's putting them at risk and the company.
Yeah. Now, given the blurry lines between personal and professional digital lives, how
Hmm.
should the board and the C suite approach executive digital wellness and hygiene? Is it now a fiduciary duty to protect key leaders from targeted attacks?
Absolutely. Because as a board member myself, and again as an executive, the fiduciary duty of the executives, officers, and board is to protect the company. And cybersecurity is one of the major damages that could occur on your watch to the organization that you're sworn to protect and that you're
Hmm.
employed to protect. So you have to take it seriously. I think the biggest challenge is it's a specialized area. And, one of the things I don't like about our current cybersecurity environment is it's built more for being able to say after you're hacked, that, well, you put these processes in place, you had these technologies in place. We've unfortunately switched from actually trying to prevent a breach to making sure we're covered when it happens. And that's the norm. That's the dirty little secret of cybersecurity that I really dislike. Because what it means is that, okay, we did everything we needed to and checked all the boxes so that we're covered by our cyber insurance, but that's not protecting the company, the employees, the customers, partners, whatever data is breached. And there aren't enough companies really focused on trying to do prevention. So when organizations are presenting their plan to the board of directors, unless somebody is on the board that knows enough about cybersecurity to ask the right questions, they have a good recovery plan. They do not have a great protection plan.
Mm.
And companies need to think about that. And board members, and as a board member, and because I sit on boards and I represent cybersecurity, this is why more boards are bringing on people with cybersecurity backgrounds, because they're like, we don't know if our plan is good or not.
Right.
And again, you're not an operator on the board, but you are an advisor, and you need to be asking the right questions. And most boards don't know what questions to ask to make sure that they're covered. So one thing boards and executives can ask is, um, you know, what's our recovery plan? And then what's our prevention plan? And what's our prevention posture? Because a lot of CEOs expect that they have a very high prevention posture, but they're funding they're not funding prevention, they're funding recovery. And that falls on their watch. And CISOs are caught between a rock and a hard place, and security teams and CIOs overseeing this, because they have year-over-year cost reductions, and yet there's year-over-year cybersecurity threat increases and sophistication.
Yeah.
And that's why, for instance, sitting in so many of these companies, there's the mandatory 1-hour mind-numbing anti-phishing training that everybody has to go through, which anybody who's ever done it knows you're figuring out what's the right answer of these 5 so that I can pass the test so I can get back to work. It does not change behavior.
Yeah.
And as somebody who specializes in like programs for behavior change, that's not what this is. This says, okay, we have our insurance discount because we're giving this to our employees once a year or twice a year for an hour. And they're all having to pass, but they're really not learning any substantive changes or changing behavior. They're just passing the test and getting back to work. These are
Yeah.
the types of things that are hurting companies the most, because they have a false sense of security, but they don't have real security.
Yeah. Because the thing is like, and also the the training is usually like super boring,
Yeah, that's
right?
why mind numbing completely. It's a sure cure for insomnia. If you can't sleep, take that take that exam.
Question 2.
Exactly, exactly. It's
Yeah,
so
because
true.
because I've taken several of them
Uh-huh,
throughout the years, and every time it was so boring.
uh-huh,
And the thing is, if you're smart enough to remember, it's the same questions, it's the same training from the year
uh-huh,
before
uh-huh,
or during onboarding. So you're
uh-huh.
like, and then if you get it
Right,
wrong, you can go back and get it right.
right.
They give you the answer anyways. So, you just like, it's,
Well, I mentioned the company where I was at when the FBI came calling. The person
mm,
who had clicked on the link on a
mhm,
phishing email that ultimately exposed the company's IP had just done that phishing training 10 weeks prior, because that's what I said, it doesn't change behavior. And cyber criminals are really smart. They come at you with urgency, danger. They come at you with something, especially if you're an employee, something that you're going to be worried you might lose your job if you don't do it. And so you're urgently trying to be helpful and follow orders of your higher in command.
mhm,
So you don't stop. I've studied neuroscience, and the thing is, our prefrontal cortex, right, in our frontal lobe, is where all of our smart thinking and going, wait a minute, something's not right here. The CFO who asked the CEO for the name of the book was in this prefrontal cortex. But what
right.
they're trained to do is get you into the fight or flight in your midbrain and get you in that fight or flight response. Because when you're there, you're just ready. You're literally ready to, fight a grizzly bear or run from a grizzly bear. And so you're not doing that thinking. You're not asking the questions. And when they get you into that state, the smartest, I've worked with people who have clicked on things who are like Mensa. They're like in the top, they're like 145 IQ and above. These are smart people, but you're not in your logical best thinking. You're in a response thinking, and they have manipulated you there. Okay, I worked in marketing for years. I've studied neuroscience. My father was a psychologist, and I can tell you, representing those, that cybersecurity understand human psychology better than therapists, marketers, and everybody else. They are brilliant at it, and they're using AI to help manipulate us. And we're very easy to manipulate. If you don't believe me, just watch any YouTube video of any of the Las Vegas illusionists, the people who are talking to you while they're literally taking your watch off of your arm and you don't even know it. We
Mhm.
are very susceptible to manipulation, even the smartest among us, and even CEOs and C suite executives. And it's our believing that we're not that is our weakest link.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm guilty. Phishing
We all are.
emails as like the testing phishing emails from
Hmm.
companies.
Uh-huh.
I've clicked on some, like, because I thought it was legit. I
You really
did.
thought it was about that Amazon delivery on Cyber Monday or
But
something. You really do. They're also very good at using cookies of where you've been.
mm,
If you just bought something on Amazon, then the email that's going to show up for you to click on about your delivery is your Amazon order. They're not going to say it's from Target when you weren't on Target, and vice
right.
versa. So your cookies, they know how to use every piece of data about you
Yeah.
to make you think this is legitimate. And that's why we just have to, don't trust but verify.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, in your personal experience involved in hidden surveillance, what non obvious digital and physical vulnerabilities are C suite's executive and high profile board members most often overlooking in their home and private offices?
So let me tell you how I got into cybersecurity. I was an executive at Intel, was not working in cybersecurity. I was in marketing for semiconductor and involved in like our, AI company acquisitions, machine learning acquisitions, and things like that. So very tech aware. I'm a girl who codes and stuff, but I work with people who are coders who are very poor at cybersecurity. It's a very specialized thing. I was targeted by cyber criminals,
Mhm.
and they were able to infiltrate a family member's phone and basically clone it and create a copy. So they were able to bypass, not only get onto our network, but then bypass our security system, disable our security system, have the deadbolts open for them, turn off the cameras so they weren't recorded, come into the home and planted surveillance in our bedroom. So they
Wow.
could hear all of our conversations, everything in our bedroom. And that went on for over a year, unbeknownst to us, because it was not a break in. If you come home and your door's been broken down or your lock's been picked and things are missing, you're going to know it. So at this point, I'm talking to the police and FBI field agent. That's where I learned I was one of a million people who whose life was devastated by cybercrime that year. We ultimately lost $500,000. My 20-year marriage ended over the stress of it. My husband had a series of heart attacks and a quadruple bypass and a personality change, and it just forever changed, altered our lives. And what it did was it sent me into finding how a way out and a way to prevent it. And that led me into cybersecurity. So I was very fortunate. I met some of the best cybersecurity people on the planet, the ones who protect our nuclear submarine codes and trillions of dollars on the Wall Street trading floor and, Fortune 100 companies and people who work with the FBI and CIA and our former Secret Service. And that's where I got invited to come in and work in cybersecurity and working side by side in the trenches on the dark web, seeing what nation state cyber criminals are doing, what hacktivists are doing, what cybercrime rings are doing, like we see in movies like Beekeeper and so, those call center models, and then
Mm.
individual hackers who would just, buy malware and an internship program for $47 and have an internet connection. All of that is what's coming at us. That's the cybercrime tsunami that
Mhm.
everybody's facing, and particularly everybody and every business in America is facing, and Canada and all of that. But I mean, it's everywhere in the world. But North America here is a number one target because we're so lucrative. And so I got into cybersecurity from that. So when you're asking me about surveillance, I know it all too well because we only discovered it through having attic repair done from a leak in the roof, and the attic repairman dislodged the surveillance that was hidden in our bedroom ceiling that was
Wow.
totally invisible to us. It was it's like almost the size of a pen head, like a pencil pen head in the
Wow.
ceiling. So it's a dot. You can't see it.
Mhm.
And I work with people who have had surveillance planted, and you can buy it. I mean, I've bought things on the internet myself just to show people. I come in and it looks like a plug that you would plug your USBs into, but it's got a camera on it, and it's coming. You find them in Airbnbs. You can find things everywhere because for a few dollars, somebody can plant something and have access to you. They'll do more sophisticated hacking like that if you're a senior person and they're targeting you. So you could be targeted or you could just be random or both. And that's where the surveillance it's very scary how the advancement of technology. I mean, I worked at Intel, so Moore's law of every 2 years, things
Yeah.
getting half the size has created, and the commodity availability of things that used to be only available in a James Bond film are now in the hands of anybody who wants them for very little money and very little effort. So you have to be vigilant because, there's no sense of privacy that you can assume anymore, and you need to be very cautious. I had my home swept where you come in and they're actually sweeping for
Mhm.
surveillance and things like that. Those things are costly. And you can also have things planted a month after you do that. If you're really being targeted, they'll come in and do a sweep, and, sometime in the next few weeks is when they'll want to break in or plant something in your car or plant something in your office. I'm not saying this to just scare people, but I am, if you are nervous hearing me say this, it's a wake-up call to realize that you need to be vigilant about ensuring that you're protecting yourself, your company, your family, your loved ones from what is readily available today.
Yeah, because you can go on Amazon and buy
Yeah.
something.
And if you don't, yeah, just go on and search for hidden surveillance cameras, and you're gonna see things pop up. Like for instance, we've all seen, like, Meta has the glasses now, and there was Google Glass. I mean, you can be recorded from somebody's sunglasses and not really be aware of it. So
Mhm.
imagine an outlet plug. There are plugs that look so that instead of just having a screw in the plate over the outlets, it's actually a camera. And there are ways to detect them, but you do need to learn some basics. One of the analogies I use is it's very much like the way we learn to protect ourselves in the physical world. You learn not to walk down a dark alley at night. You learn to be careful on streets in strange cities you're visiting. You learn to look both ways before you cross the street. You learn not to take candy from strangers. All of the internet and all of this online is so new. Nobody's taught you the online survival skills and the digital survival skills you need in the modern world. And that's what people like you and I are doing, is helping
Yeah.
people understand the equivalent of those look before you cross the street, of what to do in your online life because you have to.
Yeah. Now, what would be some of those things for online safety? So, like, let's say that don't click on stuff, right? Don't all
Yeah.
be more mindful of what you click.
Right. So
Take
ideally just even if here's the thing, people will think, okay, well, I won't click on anything from somebody I don't know. The problem is, this is a great, here's an example. This just happened to a woman I was talking to yesterday. So she clicked on a link that was sent to her from a friend on Facebook. And she doesn't have a lot of Facebook friends. She's about 52. She has maybe 100 Facebook friends, but her friends, and she also doesn't put public photos. She only shares things with her friends,
Mhm.
but her friend's account got hacked. It is so easy to hack Facebook accounts. You just have to assume that everything you're putting in private is, it may not be out
So it's
there in
public.
public, but it's accessible to a hacker because inevitably a hacker will have hacked a friend's account, and they're
Mhm.
downloading all those photos of you and your family and everything. And then, maybe you don't have any compromising photos. People are thinking of it that way. Well, that's not what it's about. It's about you had that vacation in Aruba. And so then you're going to get, something offered to you about that, or it's going to talk to you about your trip to New York. Okay, a woman I was working with in San Francisco, she'd gotten back from a trip. It's funny, we were just talking about Montreal before this, but she was actually on a trip to Montreal, and her parents knew. And she got back from her trip, and her parents had been contacted the morning she was back that she was in an accident up there and that she was at fault and the other family had been hurt. And this was an attorney trying to protect their daughter, this adult
Mhm.
woman executive. And so they were about to wire $20,000. This supposed lawyer, it was totally a scam, but they were aware of her flight schedule and they knew her contacts and they knew from her regular travel and where she went for the office they had in Montreal because of her Facebook posts and some LinkedIn information and some information on the company website. And one of the reasons people think this kind of stuff doesn't happen is like, well, I'm not that important and that seems like a lot of work. Well, for the average person, it's a lot of work. For a hacker with AI and bots that are collecting all this information, it's not. They're basically just sending out their bots to collect the information. running some programs against it, maybe spending somewhere between 5 minutes and an hour to target you. And so for most of us, we feel like, oh, they wouldn't do that to me because it might take you 50 hours to try to figure that out, and you may not even be successful at it, but you're not an expert cyber criminal. And I
Right.
think people underestimating what cyber criminals are capable of can be very costly.
Yeah. Because the thing is, cyber criminals is basically shoot your shot, right?
Yeah,
If you miss, you miss.
they've got nothing
If
to
you miss,
lose.
right, exactly. If they miss, okay, on to the next one. Let's try
Right.
again. Right. So it's
Well, if
like
they're
shoot your
successful 1 out of 1,000 times, they're making good money.
yeah,
And,
exactly.
it's kind of like back in the day, the Nigerian prince emails and the Viagra emails that were going around. And for anybody, under 30, you can Google those and look those up, ask Chad about it. But this was a thing. And the reason we would all roll our eyes and laugh, like, how do those things keep going? Because it only takes 1 in 1,000 to make it completely worthwhile for them. I mean, think about it. For $47, you can get malware and you get an internship because guess what? Cyber criminals do internships better than a lot of companies do. And then the person teaching them gets a percentage, of the first 3 months or whatever. And so they're all making money. And, in 2 to 3 months, a cyber criminal can make $10,000 to $20,000 a month.
Wow. So come to find out that the cyber criminals have a pyramid scheme.
They do. Yeah, they do. Exactly. And it's working.
Yeah. It's a
because
working pyramid scheme.
because
Wow.
most pyramid schemes run out of money at the bottom. We're talking about a $10.5 trillion economy and growing. It's not running out of money anytime soon. So the pyramid schemes work. The only thing that happens is they eventually run out of bottom to pay for the top. That's not happening with
No.
cybercrime.
Wow.
So it's
All
not
right.
going away anytime soon, for
No,
sure.
it's just scaling and
It's
scaling
scaling.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, beyond securing the corporation's perimeters, how do
hmm
executives effectively manage the online safety and cyber hygiene of their vendors, partners, and supply chain ecosystem?
That is
Where's
huge. Yeah.
like where's
90.
the
Oh,
where's the
yeah.
next major breach is likely to originate, right?
Yeah, over 90% comes from
Oh,
supply chain. So you have to be, again, it's that need to know basis. A lot of things are set up for, let me put it this way, a lot of the data transfer that's set up. And, as somebody, I mean, I've been part of implementations of everything from Salesforce to everything else. There's a lot of data being transmitted, and it's such a heavy lift to get all those things working that very often they're not reviewed enough for security. And so they're being reviewed for efficiency. So there has to be, this is why having a robust security team or a security consultant is so important, because you want them at the beginning of planning to say, here's the guardrails of what you can and can't do and maintain safety for the company. So the plan needs to be designed, needs to be architected from the beginning with security in mind. The biggest mistake people make is trying to bolt security on afterwards instead of designing it in. It's like, it's got to be woven into the fabric. The second thing is to have the security audit after the fact to make sure that no additional information is being shared that shouldn't, and that it's being protected on the other side. You have to audit your suppliers too, because, you know, a lot of them, of course, are smaller than you have. Again, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So
mhm,
it's your smaller and mid-sized companies you need to be most concerned about. Because they're the number one target of cyber criminals. Number one target is small businesses. The reason
right,
being is they have the most information, the most access to information, and the lowest security because
right,
they're going fast. They don't have the resources. I mean, we all have gotten letters from the Fortune 200 companies that have gotten breached. They don't have the security army that those large companies have.
no,
And a lot of times, very small companies, they don't even have cybersecurity. They have an IT person, and not all IT people. I've had IT people in my trainings who learn a lot because even though they're responsible for cybersecurity, they don't specialize in it. Think of it like with doctors in medicine, like you go to your general practitioner. Well, they're not
mhm,
an expert in, one particular thing. They send you to a specialist for a reason. And we forget that every company, every major project, every type of data going in and out of the company needs a specialist overseeing the design of it and periodic audits of it to make sure that nothing's being exposed that could hurt the company.
Yeah. Now, if you and also like these a lot of the companies that let's say that, contracts to the government,
Mhm.
some companies is it could be a three-man show,
It's
right?
true.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and who's the IT person there, right? Like, are they protected? Are they using just laptops and that's it, right?
Right. Right.
So
And yeah. And
it
you're only as strong as that weakest link. I've seen that where three-person shops. I worked with a company that almost went out of business, and by the way, small businesses, meaning 1,000 or fewer, 66% of them that are attacked go out of business within 6 months
Mhm.
because they can't withstand it. They can't rally. They can't come back. It's too much. There's technology damage, there's reputational damage, they lose customers. It's so stressful, but two-thirds go out of business within 6 months. So whether if you're not a small business, you do business with small business, either as a consumer or as an enterprise company or both. Um, and I worked with a veterinarian of all things. Wonderful man, very honest, and a wonderful office manager, very honest. She unfortunately was dating a guy who was not honest, and she had logged in to the company, to the company platform, and then she was in the kitchen or the shower kind of thing. And her boyfriend hacked in and downloaded all of the client's credit card information. And the way they found it was the FBI found this one commonality that all these charges, what they had in common was they all had this veterinarian's office on there. And so they were able to come back and trace that back to a human element. And again, there's certain things that are standard in cybersecurity, like geofencing, like you don't let people log in from home, or they have to have certain protocols that they follow and have been trained in. I mean, this office manager felt terrible. She had no idea. She didn't even access that information. She didn't even know it was possible to get to it. So therefore she didn't need it. And she
Mhm.
had access to something she didn't need and she was used as a conduit for a criminal getting that information when it was unnecessary. And that is because they had an IT company helping them set up their computers, but they didn't have any cybersecurity initiatives woven into protecting the company.
a hell of a story.
Yeah, and that I hear these every day, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sucks. That really does suck.
yeah,
So as a cyber incident is inevitable. What
yes.
metric should a CEO and a CFO be using to measure cyber resilience? Time to detect, time to recover, financial impact that demonstrate a tangible return on security investment.
I think they need to be they need to be able to answer these questions. Are we safe and how do we know? Are we going to
Mm.
be safe and how do we know? The challenge is that, see, I work with internal cybersecurity teams all the time and they are great. They are the heroes. They're the reason why the company hasn't been breached, or if they were breached, they were only breached once. I mean, there really is this Herculean effort of these are first responders, protecting the company and protecting the government, protecting everything. They are the unsung heroes
Mhm.
protecting our data because we're not at war as a country, but there's a war going on cyberspace, literally a war. And
Yeah.
they're in the fight and they're protecting us and they're protecting the company. So the challenge is that what the CEO and CFO and executive team are asking is for the cyber team to come in and present what they're doing. I've been part of those teams. The challenge is they're presenting, here's everything we're doing. If you're asked, well, what is the challenge is you have to be able to show that, well, here's our threat. And the reason we have that threat level, this is our threat level. But in order to get to a higher prevention and protection level, we would need to invest in X, Y, and Z, which includes people training. It includes periodic focus on it. It sometimes includes some additional tools. And very often the cybersecurity teams, as every other team in the company does, is trying to put their best foot forward and say, here's everything we're putting in place. They're not being asked the question of where are our weakest links and what do we need in order to secure them. And so it's kind of like asking somebody who's responsible for spending the money to audit themselves, right? The reason you have a separate auditor of
Yeah.
finances is because it's not the person who is spending the money that is auditing where it's going.
Mhm.
Similarly, that you just sometimes need that outside, to look at it. That's why what I really help companies with, and I know you guys do this too, is I help them understand what a great job the CISO and the security team are doing, and I make them the heroes of the organization. Very often, CISOs are bringing me in to work with their executive team because they can't make the case for what they need to do. And they're usually great at the tech, but they don't specialize in executive suite persuasion and negotiation in the sense of having the conversations about what's needed. They're trying to just present, here's the technology we have. This is everything we're doing. And so the weak links can be completely missed. They can be completely not discussed. They can be the elephant in the room that
Mhm.
only the security team knows, and that's the thing that can take the company down. So I think it's really important for CEOs to say, I want you to tell me realistically, what is our current security posture? What is our risk? And what would it take to get it from, an 8 to a 9 or a 7 to a 10 or whatever, and have them come in instead of with one report of here's everything we're doing, say, here's what we're doing, and and here's what would happen if we reduced our effort. Here's what we could do if we increased it. That's how you're really going to learn where the gap is, by seeing the
Mm.
difference between those two plans, where we are, and if we were really going to be safer, what would it take? That tells you what your gap is, and that tells you what your real risk is. And most CEOs and C-suites don't do that, and very few boards do. And when you do that, then you're informed of what the risk is. And frankly, I've worked with some boards and C-suites that kind of don't want to know because you are held as a C-suite member, you're held to your level of knowledge. So if you don't know, you're not accountable for it. So
Mm.
very often the conversation is not had. But the companies that really want to protect themselves, they have really critical IP. They want to protect their customer data. They want to have a company that has not been breached. Those companies on that part of the bell curve need to ask these questions and then be
Yes.
able to decide what level of risk they're comfortable with. They also just, if they don't want to change anything, what they can do is change their permissions to that need to know basis that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Don't give access to things that people don't need because they're a sitting duck.
Yeah. Because you're just giving them like a greater attack surface,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Correct.
And also to the point of the CISO coming in and talking, what they're doing and whatnot. I think also the language
Mm,
of the business talk
yeah,
versus the tech talk, right? Like
correct.
speaking tech, yeah, love speaking tech all the time.
Yes.
But
All the
then
jargon. We have more acronyms in our industry than any other.
exactly, right? So you're like, "Oh, yeah, like we acquired a BDR and a MDR
Yeah.
and all these
Yes.
things and whatnot, and it does this and that, and all of the bells and whistles. It costs us $10,000 a month." But the CEO and the CFO are gonna look at you like, "What are you talking about?" Right? So, like, if you
Hmm.
come in and say, "Well, we acquired a tool that is going to protect the data that is our customer data and is gonna help us, with the time consumption of each analyst down to, an hour versus
Hmm.
1 day," then, they will see the business cases
Right.
for f why you bought that or why you need to buy that. So
Right.
that's, like, also another thing that I believe
Hmm.
the business talk needs to be involved.
Well, you bring up a great point because the art of communication is the storytelling. And what you
Mhm,
just did was tell the story of what the outcome of this thing is. You're not describing the widget or giving
mhm,
the feeds and speeds of the widget or here's the features of the widget. You're saying what the initiative is going to do. We're going to protect, data at 10% greater rate, by by limiting the access of people so that those who are targeted don't become victims of cyber security and take the company data down with them. And you
mhm,
say, and in order to do that, we've bought this, this, and this. Most people in those roles are technologists and they lead with, we've bought XYZ, and they start throwing around NIST and AES and encryption and all of this. And I think, that that's one of the reasons that it's, like I said, I did not come into cybersecurity in the traditional way. I
Mhm.
was a communications person. I grew up in Hollywood. I come from a show business family. I
Yeah.
was on camera and on stage when I was 10, and I learned the art of storytelling. And I think
Mhm.
it's and then I went into marketing and PR to help create experiences and communicate to customers of what the value is of how to solve your problem a particular way, and then why consider this company. And so bringing those skills in is one of the ways that I help I help
Yeah.
CISOs and executives understand, because there's that conversion. There's a reason why I work a lot with CEOs and celebrities on their online safety. It's because you've got to tell the story. And I don't mean story and fabricating. I mean, you've got to explain the impact and the initiative and explain the why, as Simon Sinek would say, like, here's the why we're in trouble. Here's the why we need to do this initiative. And here's why it's, going to give us the ROI, why it's important. And everything else underneath it is just the supporting points. And most
Yeah.
people leave out the story and just give the supporting points. And that's why executives don't understand. If the executives understood why they needed to make either an investment in their own time to protect the company or increase investment in a security platform that is needed, or some kind of education. So whether it's money or time for them or the company or employees or whatever, if they understood what the outcome will be without it and what the
Mhm.
outcome will be with it, then they can make a good decision. Most do not have this explained to them in a way to
Right.
help them understand until it's too late. And here's the thing: for a large company, a data breach like that, it will cost you $4.4 million. That's the current cost. $4.4 million is what it costs a company, and it takes about 9 months to detect, contain, and remedy. So
Wow.
think about that. And part of your costs are those letters you have to send out to all your
Mhm.
partners, supply chain customers, everybody. Those things are not cheap. By the way, they're piled on top of your team that's already trying to do a lot. It really is cheaper to do the prevention.
Prevention.
And people don't understand that. They think, oh, they see a cost. And we're talking about a nominal amount. Sometimes it's like $20,000, $50,000, even $100,000. Compared to 4.4 million, that is a bargain.
That's a Cyber Monday sale.
It is. Yes. It's a, there you go. Yeah. The other thing too that is happening that executives need to be aware of is another thing that cyber criminals are doing is they now offering bounties to employees. So let's say you've got an employee that they can find works for you. Let's use an example of a casino in Las Vegas, because those are targeted all the time. And I know the
Mhm.
CISOs there and the security teams and what they're trying to do, and the ones who've been breached that are known breaches and widely
Mhm.
publicized, and some unknown and never publicized. But if you're a disgruntled employee, or let's say you're even just not even disgruntled, you're just having trouble making your mortgage payment, or your kids going up, you can't pay for their college tuition this semester, and you get a back channel message somewhere from a cyber criminal offering you 50 to 60% of the take, and all you have to do is click on a bad link and act innocent
Mhm.
and pretend you clicked on it. You get a phishing link in your inbox and you click on it, and then you pretend you didn't know any better. People can end up making a lot of money this way. Now, a lot of it's detectable. A lot of it can be traced. But here's the thing, what that means to the employee who's not paying attention. They click on a link. Guess what? You are suspect number one.
Mhm.
If you do not wish to be grilled by law enforcement and under the scrutiny of your security team, executive team, and human resources, you do not want to be the person who clicked on that link,
Right.
because you are suspect number one. It's like in a missing persons case where the spouse is the number one suspect.
Yeah.
It is very true here, because there are employees who are taking down companies and they're getting paid in crypto, and eventually it comes out, and many of them are in prison now because they have been caught. There are many who have not yet been caught but have done it. And then, so as an executive, you have to be aware that percentage of your employee base is your biggest threat to your company. And that's why you have to take these steps to limit their access. You do not want somebody who's, anywhere in the company randomly to be able to hit the red button and take down the company. And so you have to protect from that. If you do nothing else but talk to your security team this next week and say, we need to have a meeting to talk about this,
Mhm.
that's what you should be doing. That is your fiduciary responsibility as an executive.
Yep. And make sure that you get that meeting and
That's
get
right.
talking to each other because,
Mhm,
it's our
mhm.
responsibility, executives.
Right, yeah.
So let's say that, so if an executive or a member of their family is personally targeted in a high profile online attack,
Uh-huh.
what is the first, let's say, 30-minute corporate communications and legal strategy required to mitigate the the reputation fallout?
Well, I don't wanna give legal advice because 'cause I'm not a lawyer, and
Mm,
some of these things are situation specific, but I
mhm.
can tell you the best practice is what you need
Okay.
to be doing is implementing the plan that you already put together. You need to have a plan for being hacked. You need to have a plan for reputational damage. So I ran PR at many companies in Silicon Valley, and did PR at Intel and other places. Half of my job was getting press releases out there so we could get into the Wall Street Journal in the right articles. And the other half of my job was having press releases written that we never had to use, that are ready to
Mhm,
go. If X happens, we do this. If Y happens, we do this. The responsibility of every executive team is to do their strategic contingency planning. They do
mhm,
that around what happens if we go to war with China? What happens if the economy tanks and we have another 2009? What happens if this? That is part of what executives are hired to do and expected to do, and that's why they're compensated, is to give foresight into how to protect the company under certain circumstances. This is one of those circumstances they have to be prepared for. Being in Silicon Valley, there's, earthquake preparedness plans. If there's an earthquake, here's what happens. If all of our systems go down, what are backup systems? The time to figure out how to put out a fire is not when the fire started. When the fire starts, you implement your fire safety plan and protocol, and you follow the plan. Remember, we were talking about the fight or flight limbic
mhm.
brain and the prefrontal cortex? You are not in a state to figure out what to do. So if you don't have that plan in place, you are not you're protecting the company and you're not doing your job if you haven't gotten that done. So you need to implement the protocol that was already set up.
Yes. I was gonna say something and then my brain
Mhm.
just like, nope.
Yeah. Because there are things to do and you certainly call in the people. I mean, certainly there's gonna be a huddle where you have to get
Mhm.
the right people together. You're gonna have legal, PR, HR, the C-suite.
Yep.
You gotta get a huddle together. But that meeting is not to figure out what to do. It's to put into is to initiate the plan that was already put in place. And that is the responsibility of every leadership team.
Yeah. Implement
Implement
the
the
plan
plan and stick to the plan.
and make sure that the phone numbers and the emails
Yeah.
and all of those things are in the plan because
Mhm.
you don't want to be trying to figure out what is person A, a legal team,
Correct.
like what's their phone number, right?
And that's why you have to do drills. Again, being in California, every now and then there's these earthquake drills where you have to leave your office and go down and go to the spot where you're supposed to gather. And there's a person for your team and a backup person who's making sure everybody's accounted for, and then there's phone numbers to implement and there's, procedures of what to do. And you have to
Mhm.
test them because there's nothing worse than finding out your plan is broken or you're missing a step or you have two steps that work against each other. So you create a plan, you rehearse the plan, and then you keep it fresh, and you have to update it every 6 months. You have to look at it and go, "Anything we need to change?" Because there is. Every quarter, somebody changes out. That phone number that's on the
Mhm.
emergency contact list is for somebody who left the company or retired. The new people who need to be on there aren't on there, so you have to have that every 3 to 6 months, a refresh, a review, and not say, "Does it look good?" Because you never ask a yes or no question. You wanna be asking, "What needs updating?"
Mm. Yep.
And then plan on making an edit of some kind and then communicating it out to everybody on the team. I've been part of those teams for over 20 years. I ran the PR side, there's the facility side, there's the legal side, there's the HR side, and you come together. And even in small companies, when I was was a founder, this is my third startup. And you have to have them in startups too. You particularly have to have them in startups because you can go under if you don't have a plan in
Yeah.
place. And It doesn't have to be a be all end all. I think what people do is they're like, oh, that seems so hard. I'm not going to start. What you need to do is start. And guess what? If you spent 3 hours on it every 6 months, you'd be so much better off. At the end of 12 months, 18 months, you build it at all. It's kind of like what we say about passwords, like in password managers. Like I always recommend people use password managers because guess what? The average person has 240 passwords now because every
Wow.
time you're buying something online and, you can get 10% off, but you got to sign up for the loyalty program. Guess what? You got another account you're logging into. And all those accounts lead back to your email inbox, which leads to your, reset of your banking account, retirement accounts and stuff. So something as innocuous as a, you know, Harbor Freight or, Groupon yoga subscription could ultimately get hackers into your retirement account. So you have to be cognizant. But most people won't start a password manager because they're like, oh, I can't put all my passwords in there. It's like, well, don't. Do 10. Do the things that are going to ruin your life if you don't have them protected. So just write down 5. Write down your banking account, your retirement account, your storage of your photos. Like if those disappeared or went missing or you had a ransomware attack against them and you're going to lose your photos of kids when they're 2 or 3 that you can never recover, just write a list of those things. Just put those in your password manager. And over time, I mean, when I was recovering, the thought of getting all my passwords together was daunting, but I said, okay, I'm just going to do 5. And
Mm-hmm.
I got a password manager signed up. I did that. And guess what? The next week I did another 5 and then I did 10 and then it was easy. And then as I was creating accounts, I added them. And
Yeah.
before you know it, you've got over 100 and it didn't take anything, but you hurt yourself by not getting started by the fallacy that you have to get it all done at once and you don't. Do the most important. It really is an 80-20 rule. If
Mm-hmm.
find the 20% of things that are going to give you the 80% of total protection. For
Yeah.
example, Microsoft found that out of all the accounts that had been compromised, 89.9% did not have two-factor or multi-factor authentication turned on. So guess what?
That's another way.
Those would not have been hacked had they had it turned on. And that total
Mm-hmm.
number would have gone down by 99.9%. That is a huge number. So turn two-factor or multi-factor authentication on every account you can, especially your banking, retirement, so email, social security protections, all of that. Do it on
Yeah.
the things that matter because it could ruin your day, your year, or your life if you
Yes.
don't have those things. I work with people who have lost their entire retirement savings, or even worse, their retired parents have, and now they're figuring out how to support them because that's what was paying for the assisted living. And they just
Mm.
wired it to Dimitri overseas thinking it was a romance person. It was a romance scam and they thought they were meeting, a partner that they were going to marry. And it wasn't. It was a hacker overseas and the money's gone and it can't come back. And now
Wow.
these families of 2 working adults with kids in college are trying to figure out how to pay for grandpa's or grandma's, assisted living or dementia care, or do they have to bring them back into the house and what are they going to do? Do they break into
Yes.
their own retirement? Do they break into their kids' college fund? These are scary and real situations that people are dealing with. And I'm saying this to alert you as a listener to it so that you will be motivated to put some protections in place for yourself and your family and your business today. Make
Yeah.
this a priority. Make this a goal. This your safest month and just do
Yes.
something for safety every week.
And also for passwords for like the bank and retirement accounts,
Mhm.
have a different password.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why you want to use a password manager because it's going
Mhm.
to generate it for you, store it, and then instead of just going to, let's say you bank with Bank of America or Chase, instead of going to your browser and typing chase.com, you're going to open your app, see Chase and just say open and fill. It's going to take you to the login page. It's going to log you in safely. And the only time that something like 1Password or Bitwarden could be compromised is not from those passwords. It's from a pop-up of malware that you would have gotten from clicking on a bad link somewhere and downloading malware in your system. So you ever see a pop-up saying type in your password to update software, do not do those. Close those out. Always go to your software, to your main menu, your settings to update your software. If you do that and use a password manager, you are 99.9999999% protected. There's a reason why 92% of cybersecurity professionals use password managers, and there's a reason why 75% of us use either 1Password or Bitwarden. It's because they work. And if we're using them, you know, shouldn't you?
Yeah. Now let's go a little bit personal.
Hmm.
Your personal journey from cybercrime survivor to being named a top 10 woman in cybersecurity is
Yes.
profoundly inspiring.
Thank you.
Can you walk us through the moment you decided to take that harrowing experience and turn it into a mission to protect others?
Well, it was probably the worst day of my life because so it
I
was the
can
worst
imagine.
day and best day of my life.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I looked at having lost a $500,000. I did not feel safe in my own home. I wasn't safe in my own home because I didn't know if they could get in, how they could get in. I was not sleeping well. I was on antidepressants and Ambien. Uh, I had to not throw my hat in a ring for a promotion that was perfect for me, that was, like, pan-ultimate of what I wanted my career to be. I'd been working my whole career to get here. Couldn't do it.
Mhm,
I was barely able to show up for work. I was trying to keep things safe on the home front, and I was so depressed that morning. I woke up and I was like, I don't even know if I can get out of bed. I was just so demoralized, and I thought, "But you know what? These are bullies. I can't let the bad guys win. I can't let this be the end of my story."
mhm,
And I thought of my grown children, and I thought, "Who's gonna protect them and their children and their children?" And, to let the bad guys win and let this be a bad ending, I just did not want that to be my legacy. And I wasn't planning on I wasn't my aspiration wasn't to become a top 10 woman in cybersecurity or even to work in cybersecurity. I just thought, "You know what? I've got to feel safe in my home again, and I've got to
mhm,
find a way." And I said and I had been everywhere I turned, I kept looking for where's this check there's gotta be a checklist somewhere
right,
of what I can do to protect myself, and it didn't exist. I was on all these sites, and don't get me wrong, I was on hundreds of sites. I still to this day have the dozens of books I bought. They were all great training for passing a cybersecurity exam, even the ones that were for consumer, because they're just too technical, and they're about a very specific thing I need to do to protect one part of myself. It's like wanting to create a moat and
mhm,
and just having a few 6-foot deep holes around you that and they're not it's not protecting you. And I said, "Well, then you know what?" So I just kept looking for it and turning
mhm,
over rocks and going to new websites and talking to these cybersecurity people. And I'll tell you, it was through meeting people and asking questions, and I realized what a huge gap there was between cybersecurity professionals who had the same level of competency as the hackers. They're ethical hackers, they're good guy hackers. They have the same capability, but they use it for good. It was only through working with them for 3 years that I realized what all of us need to do to stay safe.
mm,
And I thought, well, gosh, like I said, I grew up in Hollywood with storytelling and movies and productions, and then I was in marketing and PR, and it's like, well, I'm a communications person. And I've spent my whole year of my career in Silicon Valley translating very technical concepts into
mhm,
everyday English or into simple language that people can understand. And I said, well, I can do this. And I
mhm.
was really doing it to recover and immediately thinking, I just want to protect my friends and family and then anybody I can. I'm very happy to say that I've just crossed the 1 million mark of people that I've been able to help educate, learn
Congrats.
how to protect themselves. And so getting named a top 10 woman in cybersecurity was a great honor. But what was great about it for me was I said, oh, good, now I have a platform so that I can reach more
Good.
people and help more people.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, if I had the opportunity to go back to that horrible day and have it or before that and have this not have happened to me, despite everything I lost, I would do it again because it's been so rewarding. I would sign up. It's been so rewarding, and I wouldn't have the life I've had now, and I wouldn't have met all the people I've met now, and I wouldn't have been able to help all the people I've helped. So the thing about cyber criminals is they wanted to just get to me and take me out like everybody else and stuff, and what they've actually done is create now 1 million people who know how to protect themselves, so
Yeah.
it backfired. Their plan backfired
Yeah,
on them,
exactly.
and the more that I do and that's why, with my book coming out and my podcast and stuff, which I've had your members on, it's just about educating people in plain English because when I was looking for it, I couldn't find the plain English version of everything, and as I
Mhm.
said, Nobody wants to learn cybersecurity except cybersecurity geeks. Everybody else just wants to know how to stay safe. And
Right.
so when we can tell them how to stay safe in their personal life, in their family, in their home, and in their business, especially against these new waves of cybercrime that are coming at us and deep fakes and AI hacks that, would have been science fiction just a couple of years ago, then, everybody's learning together and we get stronger together and they get to share that with more people. So it's been incredibly rewarding. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I love getting to help people. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever experienced in my life. And that's why I founded Smarter Online Safety, is to
Yeah.
be able to do that.
That's amazing. Now, you mentioned using neuroscience based techniques for recovery. How crucial is the mental resilience and mindset of a leader in mitigating the psychological stress and decision making errors that often accompany persistent online attacks?
It's huge because, again, all of it is geared towards getting you in fight or flight. That's why I said follow the plan because
Yeah.
we can't even think well. We're not in our prefrontal cortex. We're not in our logical brain. We are in our fight or flight response. And the
Mhm.
best we can do in that is follow a plan that at a better time with our better brain, we figured out what to do and then just follow the
Yeah.
steps. There's a reason we do that. There's a reason the military does that. There's a reason companies that are best best in class do that. So I think that what we really need to do is we just have to be aware that we're not in our right mind. There's a reason we say that. Our right mind is right above our eyes. And when we are in panic mode, we are not in our right mind there. And so we need to be extra cognizant. It's really important. I did a lot of things to learn how to calm my limbic system and bring my prefrontal cortex back online. I actually studied at the Neurosculpting Institute in Denver while I was recovering from my cyber attack because that gave me the groundedness and the ability to stay calm under pressure. And one of the things I was known for is that I'll be in a boardroom and tempers are flaring and people are yelling and nobody's throwing anything yet, but it might get them to that. And I'm the calm, cool, collected one. And I can say, okay, let's all take a beat. But the important thing to do is to just ground yourself. We tend to get caught up in either like, oh, shoot, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. So you're kind of living in the past, or
Mhm.
you're thinking, oh my God, this could happen, that could happen. Now, it is true you want to be looking at what is possible, but when you're in that worry or that regret mode, you're not in the. So a simple hack that everybody can do, and it's going to sound trite, but it actually works, is to stop, just be aware of your feet on the floor, your legs in the chair, or your hands on your legs if you're standing up, and just take some deep breaths and come down and say, okay, right now we have a situation, but we're alive, we're here, we're standing. You just have to ground yourself in some feeling of safety in the present moment. You have oxygen, you have hopefully you have a roof over your head, but you're not actually being threatened by a saber-toothed tiger like our ancestors. So you need to bring yourself back to, okay, we've got a serious thing to take care of, but we're going to do this calmly, rationally, and you just need to calm yourself down. And you've got to bring your good thinking back online. The good news is, see, what happens in our brains is that we are sugar and oxygen and all of that. It can only fuel either our logical brain or our fight or flight brain. And
Okay.
so if you calm one down, you actually bring your good thinking back online. And you just need to do that with some breathing, relaxing, going, okay, we can figure this out. You need to tell yourself like, we're going to figure this out. Okay. Yes, we're
Yes.
dealing with a situation, but we're going to figure this out. So you just need to do some good incident commander mantras, if you will, and then take charge and not panic and get yourself all agitated because you are not going to even be able to follow the plan. So I know it's easier said than done, but discipline of just doing that repeatedly or just trying to be the calming presence in the midst of that chaos. You're not
Yeah.
only calming yourself down, you're calming the rest of the team. And again, that's what leaders do. And you can be a leader from anywhere in the organization. You can be a leader from anywhere in the family. I've seen
Mhm.
10-year-olds be the grounding influence for the entire family and the voice of reason. So you definitely can, but you just need to focus on, okay, what are we going to do now? What should we do now? Let's
Yeah.
follow the plan. And that's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah. And I think if we put that in the plan, the incident plan, right?
Yes.
Let's put let's breathe, let's do this, let's do
Right.
that. Like the
Mhm.
first thing that you need to do is this: breathe,
Right.
stay grounded, we got this, positive affirmations, and then get into the plan. That would
Right,
be.
and I think the thing about the positive affirmations is saying platitudes is not like, "It's okay, it's not that bad." When it is that bad, actually can work against you. But what's really important to say is, "We're smart people, we're gonna figure this out. We're a good
Mhm.
team, we're gonna figure this out. We're all together here, we're gonna figure this out. This
Yeah.
is hard, but we're gonna figure it out." Say things that are true,
Mhm.
but the thing is if you say, "Oh my gosh, we're doomed," you're going to
Be doomed.
you're kind of be doomed, and if you say, "You know what? This is bad. This is really bad, but we're gonna figure this out."
Mhm.
Focusing on the fact that you're gonna figure this out, you're kind of setting the finish line, and if
Right.
the finish line could either be doomsday or positive or the best positive outcome, and it's your job whoever's leading, it's your job to set a positive finish line, that we're not all gonna drown in the ocean, we're gonna get to the mountaintop. That's your job as a leader. It's true in the military, it's true in an organization, it's true in a family, and it's true in a crisis for sure.
Yeah. All right. So I don't have any more questions for you. This was a very nice conversation. Thank you, Jocelyn, for coming on. I truly appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Tin.
And I thank you to the audience, the Wise crew. And I see you guys next time. Bye.
Sounds great. Thank you.